population of this country, however, is Muslim. But actually, the three great religions of the world are all, Abrahamic. They're Abraham. We're all sons and daughters of Abraham. And people seem to lose sight of that when they're trying to butcher each other. But we are. And maybe if we took the state out of it and then tried to stimulate a national debate, we might find that the number of values that are shared are actually more than we think. We have more in common than we have difference. The problem is, as it currently stands, is that the instances you've said, which, particularly in the case of female circumcision, is not common, but it is seized upon as evidence of the fact that we are being tolerant of things that we should be intolerant of. And I hear what you say, Ken. I just don't think the debate and the discussion has been had. And maybe that's some sort of post-colonial conscience thing, that we can't really talk about it because we're worried about being accused of being anti-Muslim, racist, anti-Palestinian, whatever it is, and people feel very nervous about discussing these issues.
We should be deciding on whether we're going to have a legal system that's fair for all, or whether we're going to have a legal system for each.
No, but we do have a legal system for one legal system. There are elements of one community that want a separate legal system. And I'm sorry, if they want a separate legal system, then they're on the doors. We have one legal system. That's how this country works. In fact, our common law is remarkable. Our legal system is something to be proud of, and it applies to all British citizens, as should do, irrespective of colour or religion. And I think we need to be more assertive about what our values and standards are. It's a difficult debate to be had because mine might be different to yours, but I do think that it's about time that we did. Because actually the challenge of, say, Islamic extremism is not a challenge of you shoot me, I shoot you. It's a battle of ideas, it's a battle of understanding, it's a battle of minds, it's not a battle with guns. And so we need to know what we are and what we stand for and what we believe in. And I think we've had a period that's been quite benign, so we've become quite sort of a bit too relaxed about all of that. Actually, our way of life is threatened by this minority of people who want a different way of life. But to defend our way of life, we've got to know why it is the way it is and what we value, and be strong in defence of it. And I'm not sure that we're yet there. We haven't stepped up to the plate.
Well, certainly the way some of the universities are biasing themselves to allowing some practices does seem a bit.
Yeah, I mean there are, there's the argument around people being free to choose to do what they do, freedom of expression, all this sort of stuff. There is this junction of what is your right to do what you want to do and how it impinges upon me and my values, and that philosophical debate can be difficult. Okay, but I'm with you on this sense that we're not perhaps being robust enough in defending what we see as right, and I think it's about time that people like me did.
Before that minority becomes majority.
Well, no, it's before that minority stimulates a response on the opposite side that is just as bad. You only have to look back in history to where did the Nazis come from. It was a reaction to the other side, and I think that I want a secular society that is comfortable and at peace with itself, irrespective of whether it's whichever faiths make up that society. At the moment, there are divisions between people, or have formed. There's ghettoisation in certain parts of the country, and are we surprised then that from that comes some perverse, extreme interpretations of Quranic text, and indeed potentially of biblical text? We need to be intolerant of intolerance, I guess, to defend this great nation and what it's about, which is the ability for me to come here this evening and speak to you. To express my views without fear of being attacked. You know, and for you to be able to express your views. And we could sleepwalk into it not being the case. Right.
Thank you. I just wanted to understand your opinion on Ukraine. What do you think of our foreign policy on that, you know, in that side of the world and with the current situation?
I think I'll step back from this. When I turned up at Westminster, I was expected to go on the Health Select Committee. I can't do a doctor with health, and I said, absolutely not. I'm not a one-trick pony. Actually, there are two things this country's going to have. Two big challenges are ageing and energy. And within energy, I would say food, access to food as well, and water. At the time we went, I couldn't understand why I didn't want to do something more interesting. I like to think I got it right, Michael, in 2010, because since then we've had various energy issues, electricity supply issues. There's widespread concern around energy companies and the way in which the market works, and whether it works in favour of the customer or not. But on the wider global front, you've had the Arab awakening, and now you've got Ukraine. It's our reaction to Ukraine should be, this is totally out of order. We should be more assertive. We should be, sanctions should be in straight away. Indeed, I would suggest that actually the response to the situation wouldn't have been great if there was a Western democratic expeditionary force that could be deployed into that country to stabilise what was an unstable situation. But we do not have that capacity, and there is absolutely no appetite for the British public to do those sort of things. Okay? That I get. Okay? So what happens is that chaos ensues in Ukraine, and Russia, who view Ukraine as being part of their sphere, essentially invade to stabilise, particularly the Crimea, because of obvious naval assets. A country, Russia, that is not democratic, it is autocratic, it isn't at all stable, it's economically very weak, it relies upon an oil barrel price north of $100 just to stand still. The average life expectancy of a man is less than 50 in Russia. Okay, this is not a strong nation, and yet it thought it had to invade to stabilise the situation because it felt threatened. And we are totally powerless, really, to do very much about it. The question is that, you know, should we be able to do something about it? What do we stand for as a nation? Do we think that the Ukraine is like Sudetenland in 1936, 37? There's various people talking about these issues at the moment, worrying that we've become somewhat weak, that we're not standing up for democratic rights and human rights and all these sort of things. I think all I would say about Ukraine is it's highlighted our weakness as a nation, and the weakness of our position. And the Germans, 36% of their gas comes through pipelines across Ukrainian territory. You know, the idea the Germans are going to want to get involved with bashing the Russians, you know, come on. And they've just cancelled their nuclear power station, so they're going to be even more in hock to the Russians. I don't think it's a positive development that Russia, in its current state, has done what it's done. It worries me. It worries me that they underpin the Assad regime, which is what they do. And part of that is because the Qataris want to put a pipeline across Syrian territory as a competitor to Gazprom. And it goes across Syria and out the other side of the proposed route. Well, funnily enough, the Russians don't want that pipeline built, do they? So they support Assad. So I think all of this is worrying. But as a nation, we have to ask ourselves again, and I'll end on this question. We have to ask ourselves, what do we want to be? What type of country do we want to be? Do we want to be a sort of a Switzerland / Sweden type country resign from our permanent membership in the Security Council. Permanent membership which comes with responsibilities which we do not discharge at the moment particularly well. Do we want to be a global player, a country that stands for something that actually that other countries look to lead, to stand up in the way that we did in 39? Do we want to be a country like that? Because we can be if we want to be. If we think that that's something that Britain can do, we can do that. But if we're going to do that, we're going to have to accept that it's going to require some sacrifice here at home, and that we're going to have to spend a bit more money on defence probably, and perhaps a bit less money on health and welfare as a consequence. That we're going to have to be consistent, that we're going to have to accept that people might lose their lives. I mean, I often reflect upon in PMQs when Prime Minister and Ed Miliband, they list the names of the people who've died in Afghanistan. And it's always moving, and you listen to the names, though I gather some elements with the army don't like it. They don't like the fact that it happens, and I'm not so sure I'm comfortable about that it happens, but I understand why it does. Can you imagine Lloyd George, day 2 of the Somme? He'd be there all night, reading the names. 11,000 casualties first day. Our stomach for the fight, so to speak, our desire to want to stand up and be, stand for something as a nation, is not what it once was. And maybe that's good. Maybe that's a positive development. Maybe we should just say, do you know what? We can't sort out the world's problems. Let's just sort out ourselves. I'm personally of the opinion that the world is so increasingly interdependent that there are few countries that can be described as good in the world. That those of us who are residents of those countries that stand for something positive, I think have a responsibility. And I think we need to have a debate about that. I know where the public mood is on armed intervention at the moment. And I voted against the Syrian intervention, by the way, because I thought it was ill thought through and had no strategy. But I'm no pacifist. I understand the world is a difficult place, and that we might have to stand up, in the way that my grandfather's generation did. And we need to recognise that. And the problem with Ukraine is that it's highlighted that we're in no position to do so. We might want to reflect upon that. Anyway, thank you very much. They've been very good questions this evening, so I'm getting rather exhausted. And I do appreciate it, because it makes me go away and think about the issues. It makes me think about the questions and the answers I've given, and whether I've said something differently or said it in a different way. So this is of real value to me as well. So thank you for coming.